You're listening to the Living Inside Out podcast, and I'm your host, Tox Arotere. This is episode 92. Welcome to the Living Inside Out podcast, where we believe the mind is the engine room of our lives. Episode 92 is Overcoming Impostor Syndrome. Hey. How are you doing, my dear friend? Or as we say in Nigeria, how now? I love how ethnic languages pack so much meaning and feeling into one word in a way that the English language just is unable to do. So when you say how now, that is loaded with love and care. It means, how is life? How are you? How is business? How are your parents? How now actually means, how is everything that touches your life? And I'm asking because I genuinely care. So when we say how now, it really just means, how are you? That's the literal translation. But what I've just described is the hidden meaning behind it. So it's not just a formality that you say because you've got to greet somebody or you have to respond. So I hope you've been well, and I trust that your weekend, if you're listening on the weekend, is going well, or your week has started well. It is not lost on me that I have new listeners. So welcome. And thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time, Living Inside Out is a space where we dissect matters of the mind, entrepreneurship, and our faith. So I'd really love you to tell me how you found out about this podcast or how you found me. And if at the end of this episode you think, this could be my home, I like this stuff, then please give me a 5-star rating and also subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. And can I also ask that you share this with 5 people that you think would benefit from this material? Thank you once more, and I hope you enjoy Living Inside Out. And to you who have been listening for the past 92 episodes or more or less, it should be or less, I haven't done more than 92. I want to say welcome back and thank you so very much. And do you remember when we first started and I shared and confessed that I didn't want to start the podcast because I didn't know for sure that I would actually be able to go past episode 6, and now we're at 92. Thank you. If you were not listening, I would not be recording, so I really appreciate you. I want to give a shout out to my new family of amazing sisters, the Wimbies community. I don't like using that word amazing, and I don't like using it more than once in one conversation, but I don't even have a better one. So Wimbies is a group, a networking group for women, and it's based in Nigeria, and it's made up of women in management, business, and public service. And honestly, the love that I have felt, I haven't felt that in a very long time. I'll give you an example. So we had the induction last weekend, and one of the ladies, and we're talking, the group is made up of thousands of women. I can't remember how many. I want to say like 3,000, maybe more, maybe a little bit less. And this woman shared, she joined in just as we were coming to the end, and she put in the chat, "I'm so sorry I'm late. My son is in ICU." Look at the level of reaching out to this woman and prayers. "Oh, God, keep him. He's healed in Jesus' name. Oh, poor woman, sending hugs to you." I mean, it was just amazing. It was just so beautiful. And it really did bring tears to my eyes because honestly, I feel sometimes, especially in the West, there is so much emphasis on appearance and how you're being perceived by people that your emotions are measured and your expression is calculated, and you don't want to do too much so that you're not, crossing boundaries and all of that stuff. But anyway, Wimbies is amazing, and I have made some great friends. I've already been reached out to and have reached out to a few people as well. This is a great network. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, and I encourage you to check us out. Us. So I have two announcements. Actually, I have one announcement, two announcements. On the 18th of May, I will be running my first PR workshop. I've mentioned this previously, but I had such a tight schedule that I couldn't fix a date. I kept saying it's coming. And that's because I was trying to move things around. And May was threatening to be so busy that I wouldn't be able to breathe. But now we have a date. It's the 18th of April. Sorry, that's my birthday. The 18th of May at 7 p.m., which is just, 6 p.m., sorry, in just about 2 weeks from now. And I will teach you everything I know about PR. Everything. I've run my business for close to 20 years. Oh my gosh. Properly, in the UK, I've run it for 16 years because I used my youngest son as a measure because it was while I was pregnant with him that I started. And for much of that time, I've done my own PR and I have enjoyed press from the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, Nigeria, South Africa, Australia, and counting. And I've done all of it myself. And I want to share the tips and the tricks and behind the scenes of how I did it myself. And the cost of doing your own PR is very, very small, especially if you're on a shoestring budget, which is how I grew my business. Okay, and so I'm charging a small fee of £290 only because it's the first time I'm running it. The next time, it's going to be substantially more. Two reasons. It really is worth a whole lot more than £290. But also, I'm going to be using the feedback from this pilot one to build and develop the next one that I do, and so it will cost quite a bit more. So if you want to jump on for under £300, now's the time. I've got 2 more weeks before running it, and all of the details is on my website or in the show notes. Second mention is I've also received a surge of inquiries on how to write your rockstar story because more people have been watching my TED Talk and have been reaching out and saying, do you teach people how to do this? And yes, I do. So I've got 3 options. First one is where I do it with you, 1-to-1. That is £290. I like that number. And this is us working together 1-to-1 to craft your story. The second one is a small group session and it's interactive and you get the benefit of doing it with other people, and I talk you all through and answer questions and everything, and that's for a very small amount of £99. And then there is a DIY on-demand option, which is a video with worksheets that you do by yourself, and that's only £49. So you can sign up to any of them on my website. Now let's get into today. We are discussing imposter syndrome. I first introduced this concept to you in episode 39, and somehow it has shown up on my path again. Episode 39 was probably 2 years ago. Now, if you're in my circle, i.e. we're connected on social media, or you are a regular listener on this podcast, then you'd know that lately I've been having a fair amount of press from the Nigerian/African media. And this is due to my work on transformational speaking and mindset coaching in Nigeria. So let me tell you a little bit about that actually, because of my new listeners. Earlier this year, I began a new journey, a new career that my business, the Baby Cut Shop, has played a major role in preparing me for. So let's back up a little bit. After I started my business from scratch, or started my life from scratch following my tsunami, I call it the perfect storm, but I think the tsunami is actually a more appropriate term for it. My tsunami of losing everything. The only resource I had besides being alive in Christ was my mind. And quite by accident, I stumbled upon gems that I had hidden inside me. If you've watched my TED Talk, you'd know that the turning point for me came about when I read an article in a magazine that prompted me to rewrite my story. And doing that revealed that there were abilities and precious gems and gifts that God had given to all of us, but I was totally unaware of. So I began to practice regular introspection to find more of those gifts and more of those gems. And as I did, found some not so nice mindsets. These were limiting beliefs. And, they were not even just simply there, sitting there, waiting to be accessed, but they had swaddled and almost strangled my gift so that I couldn't even access the best part of me. So I started the practice of just stripping those away. And for example, one of the thoughts was imposter syndrome, which is what we're discussing today. Began to work on each of them one by one, and as God was leading me, all the limiting thoughts and beliefs I found were cynicism, doubt in my ability, needing the approval of others, and so many more. And I will refer you to episode 9 titled Lies We Believe for more on hidden lies and limiting thoughts. So as I shared my story with people and the mindsets that I was discovering, I began to receive invites to speak at events. While at the same time writing about those mindsets, I used to have a blog and I wrote for a couple of magazines as well, where you write about how to remove them. And then people would start to call me and ask me questions, and I'd be on the phone for hours helping them to unpick their minds. And it was not a burden. I enjoyed it. I was coaching people without knowing it. In 2020, I decided to get trained on how to do it properly and received a certificate in coaching and personal development from the CAP Institute, which is headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. And so over the years, I've jokingly referred to my company, the Baby Cut Shop, which also houses my furniture brand. I've just joked about it and said it exists to teach me life lessons. Because if you run a business and remotely have sizable dreams for it, you will know that it's not for the faint-hearted. Sometimes it feels like your life is on an altar being offered up as a sacrifice. Business is hard. Running it, especially if you're doing it on your own, it's tough. As a matter of fact, if you have a business and you have not been through the fire, may I suggest that you are playing close to the edge of your comfort zone. You haven't left it yet. And this means there's room for growth and there's room for expansion. Anywho, at the start of the year, I pondered on my life, what do you really want, Tokes? And this is the question I recommend that you ask yourself. What do I really want? And then answer so honestly and succinctly that a 5-year-old would read and understand it. And so my answer when I asked was, I want to help transform the minds of individuals in Africa, starting in my country, Nigeria. Simple. I've had the opportunity of speaking on stages in the United Kingdom and abroad. I even have a talk in Brazil coming up in a couple of weeks. Even though it's going to be conducted by Zoom, it would be wonderful for me to have gone there in person because I might be speaking to my cousins. My roots are Brazilian. My ancestors, the Ferreiras, arrived in Lagos just a little over 100 years before I was born. So this is particularly special for me. But I've spoken to audiences in multiple countries. My heart is in Nigeria. It's in my home. It's on my soil of Africa, which is what has led to much of the press and the interviews. And I'll leave links in the show notes if you would like to watch or read them. I am so grateful for your support and encouragement. Many people have helped me and have continued to do so, and I am just floored by it all. But you see, these features have exposed something in me that I thought was dead. Impostor syndrome has reared its head again, but not by afflicting me largely like it did previously. But what's happened is I'm watching my life play out from the sidelines. I guess it's maturity, but I haven't allowed my head to get sucked into what I'm doing to the point that I'm not able to observe myself and learn how I'm behaving and how I'm navigating this path. It's really important to come away from yourself and watch yourself from a distance, because you can see clearly and you can see and analyze things without having to use your emotions. And so this time I'm looking and I can see how much I've grown but I can also see how much growing is still required. In addition, Wimbase, I've become their unofficial ambassador, and I'm recommending it to every female like I did earlier on. But following my introduction to the group, many of the ladies reached out privately, and we have been talking, and I have found my missing sisters, but I've also found that my sisters, quite a few of them, as we're having these conversations, there is a common theme that I'm seeing, and it's because I'm now able to watch their lives unfold as they're telling me their stories and sharing their journeys, and I can see imposter syndrome showing up as well. When you are able to do that for yourself and do it for other people, i.e. pull away from the situation and the person and watch, you can hear what is not being said. And so many of us are victims of not wanting to be too much, thanks to imposter syndrome that says that we are too much. So I want to share some ways in which it shows up and how we can recognize it and banish it. Imposter syndrome is the state of mind where you cannot simply accept responsibility for the good work you have done. And so you end up relying on the opinions of others to deem you worthy. Just yesterday, we shared on our social media page a throwback to episode 12, which is toxic friendships. And one of the friends I mentioned was opinionated Olivia. This was someone I was friends with for over 10 years, and what made the friendship toxic was a combination of my people-pleasing tendencies and imposter syndrome telling me that I needed outside approval against the backdrop of her opinionated personality. I definitely recommend that episode because it's not about people, but it's about friendship combination. Well, it's about people as well, but also friendship combinations. But I was seeking the approval of a friend, even though I had already enjoyed success up until that point. And what imposter syndrome was telling me was that I couldn't recreate new wins because I wasn't responsible for the previous ones. And so when I was speaking to my friend Tommy yesterday, I said to her that I had to forgive myself for doing that to me, because we hurt our soul when we esteem the opinions of others above our deepest, truest desires. If you find yourself unwilling to make decisions without first seeking validation from others, especially when you've already had a trail of good decisions and success behind you, there is a possibility that you're operating under this limiting belief. The second way in which it showed up for me, I'll tell you a little backstory. Recently, one of my staff quit, and my default reaction, not an actual acted out reaction, but my default thought, which created an emotion within me, was irritation. And that was my ego. My ego once in a while shows up as chief interpreter of scenarios, and this time it told me that her leaving was me being rejected. Thankfully, it was only a fleeting feeling. I was able to get a handle on it really quickly. But that's because I've been down this road before, you see. Years ago, I terminated a member of staff, terminated her employment with me because of some really bad stuff that this person had done. And as I reflected on her tenure, she was with me for quite a while, and I reflected on her tenure with me, and I was going through some of the work she had done. I saw how substandard her work was. But that's not the worst part. The worst part of it was the evidence was there the entire time. But I didn't do anything about it because I didn't think that I was worthy of a higher quality of staff. This is a subtle way in which imposter syndrome shows up. And the reason we cannot be dismissive about it is that it will rob you of future growth because you don't recognize the opportunities of success you've created for yourself. So I've gone through just sweat, blood, and tears of building my business to a certain point. And then I hire a member of staff. And I choose to hire a member of staff that is not worthy of the success and the work that I have done, because imposter syndrome has explained to me that what I have done up until now was not sufficient to attract the right member of staff, so therefore I needed to settle. So for you, it might not be in staffing, it might not be in relationships even, but I want you to not dismiss the danger of sitting with or living with imposter syndrome, because in my case, having the wrong member of staff robbed me of the opportunity of growth that the right person would have brought. Finally, ask yourself, this is my third imposter syndrome expose. Ask yourself, what background music is playing as you navigate your life? When you take action, what are your expectations? Are you doing things so you can mark them as done? Or are you doing it to create the result you expect? Going through a series of back-to-back challenges can make you cynical and unexpecting of results that you've tried and nothing came out of it. So I might as well just get used to results not being born from my actions, but I'm going to do it anyway, so it will not be said that I never tried. So you may end up operating with an expectation that what you do isn't going to work out anyway. And if it does, it happened by chance. And what that will do to you is not accept responsibility for your success, because your mind has said it's by chance, not by my hard work. If you don't deal with imposter syndrome, it will help you create a dangerous template for you to follow on how you live your life. And that template, that roadmap, is going to take you miles away from the path that God marked out for you. So let's look at 3 practical tips on how to address imposter syndrome. Number 1, stop to recognize and celebrate every single win, no matter how small. I love something Stephen Bartlett shared some time back. He said, he showed a graphic on LinkedIn and he said, this is success, this is success, this is success. And each of those was a representation of how much work was done, or how positive, I guess, we felt. In other words, success today is going to look very different from success tomorrow. It's not being measured by how much you accomplished, but rather it is being measured by how much you gave up to do something. So for example, if getting out of bed and having a shower was the most you could do, then you had a successful. If that was your goal, like, let me just get myself out of bed because I am depressed or going through whatever it is I'm going through, then that's a successful day. If it was having 10 meetings with 10 different board members, then that was a successful day. So for every day is going to be different. Measure and recognize and celebrate every single win, because entrepreneurs have a knack for never stopping, and we tend to just keep racing against the clock. And we only stop to look back and acknowledge wins that empower us. But every single win has to be celebrated. Tip number 2 is, if you're uncertain about a project that you're undertaking, for example, you're about to give a talk or give a presentation, write a list of bullet points and familiarize yourself with each point. Because preparation closes the gap that imposter syndrome creates. There are so many things that we get into as women, and we question ourselves and question our abilities before we even begin. Just prepare and tell yourself, I've done the work. And finally, there's a good question you should ask. How did it go? How did it go is a question you're going to ask yourself at the end of whatever it is you've done. How did I do? Even at the end of each day. How did today go? What did I do well? It helps you to identify the wins, and it stops you from ignoring and running away the threatening feeling of failure that I may have failed somewhere. Because sometimes we don't ask ourselves that because we don't want to face up to the things that didn't go so well. We don't want to experience the feeling that says you didn't do so well. Well, it's your life. All of it, embrace it. The stuff that went well, the stuff that didn't go well. And ask as well. You can ask someone else for feedback, ask people for feedback. However, don't rely exclusively on their opinions. Take in what they've said, but measure it up against what your soul is saying to you. One of the most repeated phrases on the Living Inside Out podcast is the inside is superior to the outside. And that sums up the whole Living Inside Out concept, which is you're made up of spirit, soul, and body. Your spirit is the most superior part of you. It's a part that's connected to God. It's a part that was created first. It's a part that's alive. Your soul is next in line, and your soul is that part that contains your personality, your memories, and all of that stuff, and your thoughts. Nothing happens outside, externally or in the physical realm without your mind processing it first. So your mind is the processor or the engine room of your life, and then it passes on the instructions to your body to carry out. But unfortunately, the way that we tend to function is our focus is so much on what we do that we don't look back to think, to observe what are we thinking, because it was your thoughts that created it in the first instance. And so I want to encourage you to really practice living from the inside out and learning to trust your inside, which is why it's great to get the opinions of others and wonderful to get feedback, but always measure it against the backdrop of the most superior part of you. Not your ego, not your pride, not your emotions, but your spirit. And then tell yourself, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of you. Some cultures, including my culture, frown on self-praise because they believe that it masquerades as arrogance. But being clear about your intention liberates you. You're not asking, how did you do? Or I'm proud of myself because you want to boost your ego. Your intention is to improve and to find out the best parts of you and find out what you've done well so that you can continue to replicate it. I hope this has blessed you. I want to thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and rate this episode. I appreciate you so much and can't wait to connect with you on social. My handle is Talks Arotere on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Talk to you soon.